by the blood of Christ the Lamb. We are united in Jesus Christ. We are the soldiers of the light. We don't wrestle flesh and blood, but principalities of the dark. We too are marching to one beat, crushing the enemy under our feet. We are mighty in our stand, with God's word in our hand. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Lord our God is a sword and tower. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Of we are united in Jesus Christ. We are the soldiers of the light. We don't wrestle flesh and blood, but principalities of the dark. We too are marching to one beat, crushing the enemy under our feet. We are mighty in our stand, with God's word in our hand. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Lord our God is a sword and shield. Lord our God is a mighty tower. Lord our God is a sword and shield. The rock of ages. We are united in Jesus Christ. We are the soldiers of the light. We don't wrestle flesh and blood, but principalities of the dark. We too are marching to one beat, crushing the enemy under our feet. We are mighty in our stand, with God's word in our hand. We too are marching to one beat, crushing the enemy under our feet. We are mighty in our stand, with God's word in our hand. We are mighty in our stand, with God's word in our hand. We are mighty in our stand, with God's word in our hand. We are mighty.
Okay, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Hello to everyone online. Who here is rooting for the Bengals today? Who here is rooting for the Rams? Who could care less? Hey, there's more. There's a lot of hands for the. Okay, well, we'll see how this all shakes out. The biggest viewing television event each year, and so Super Bowl Sunday, Valentine's Day tomorrow. There's a lot going on. We are in week number 6 of our series here, and how many of you have committed to some of the things we've outlined, like praying for someone throughout this 8 weeks, making disciples, and at the end of this series, Pastor Tiemann will wrap up in a couple of weeks, and we'll also wrap up Mid-Pointe. The Making Disciples series will be over, and then our homework begins. We take our Unshakable book, we take the discipleship journey, and the person or persons that you have been before, allow God to open the door and to go ahead and allow you to share the gospel. And we have 5 objections we've been hitting over these 8 weeks, and 3 different approaches to evangelism. Next week, Laura Gilliland will be doing part 2, what Dave Eskoff set up, which was how to share the gospel, the approaches. How do you start the conversation? It's probably the most difficult part of sharing the gospel, is starting the conversation, having a context. And I think she and I talked. I've seen a little bit of what she has. Looks really good. So, and then the week after, I wrap this up with the question of, which is an objection people when they hear the gospel. Well, what about those people who never hear the gospel? The Aborigine in Australia, the people in deepest, darkest Africa who've never heard the gospel. What happens with them? Well, today we are going to hit one topic that is vital. It is foundational to what we believe, and it is the whole aspect of, did God create the universe and us, or are we random, purposeless accidents by way of macroevolution? And this is a technical subject, and I've got my whole library of paperwork under our pool table at home, and it is bin after bin after bin of paperwork. I have my books on the shelf. For 28 years, I've absolutely loved collecting this stuff and looking at it. And the three areas that I have the most information on is the Bible, how the Bible was formed, how it came to be, it is indeed the Word of God, and evolution. I have bins paperwork on this because it's so technical. So to that end, I included something in your bulletin, which is an outline, or not an outline, it is a resource list. If you guys are interested at all, you can look at these names and go ahead and Google them and pull up articles. You can pull up websites with all kinds of information they can provide, YouTube videos. But these basic books on the front are exactly that. They're pretty easy to read, basic information about creation and evolution. Because I'm going to try to take what is normally an 8 or 10 week class and consolidate it into 40 minutes. So wish me luck, because it's going to be, it's one of those challenges. And then the backside is more technical information. But what I want to leave with you today, and so we all understand this, is that this topic and the importance of it has to do with fundamental starting point, origins. Where did we come from? Pastor Tiemann talked about it last week. There are 4 questions every religion has to answer. Origin, where did we come from? Condition, why are we the way we are? Salvation or morality, how do we change the way we are? There's so many self-help books out there. Number 4, where do we go? Well, if evolution's true, we came by random accidents, and when you die, it's over. No afterlife, right? Is that, well, this worldview absolutely is destroying our kids. This is the issue that is tearing, when I do, for the last 26 years, 27 years, I've done classes with the kids, doing 6th, 7th, and 8th graders right now, religion elective, and it is number 1, creation and evolution. Number 2, universalism. Jesus is the one answer. And number 3 is moral relativism, because we just don't believe in moral absolutes anymore, and it leads to the. So this is foundational. Our kids are being picked off one by one. We pay $30,000 a year to send them to college so they can have their faith beaten out of them. Well, I want to tell you, the emperor has no clothes. Evolution does not hold water. Fortunately, because society is, throughout this world, pulled away from God, this is a great answer to go ahead and hold on to, so you don't have to be accountable to God. So understand that this is really foundational. There are 3 parts to my talk today. First, in the first 2, pretty quick. Definition of naturalistic atheism, what it is. Number 2 then is how to get here, the founders of science and stuff. And then number 3 is the 3 different areas that you can have answers for this. Okay, naturalistic atheism is the foundation of evolution. And this emerged out of the Enlightenment, 1700s, 1800s, and here we are. So God does not exist, naturalistic atheism. Matter is all there is. This podium, this clicker I have, my shoes I'm wearing, the material universe is all there is, all there ever will be, okay? And there is no afterlife. God doesn't exist. And by the way, there are people who, there are different views on how evolution could have happened. Some of our founding fathers were deists. And deism says God wound up the clock, set it down, and is not involved in creation, and evolution is how we came about. Maybe, maybe not. Theistic evolution, it's Christian believers in God who want to split this down the middle and say God used macroevolution to get us to where we're at. Maybe, maybe not. Or the biblical narrative is God created you specially. God created the universe and the earth specially for you to exist, to have a loving relationship with Him. Okay? So understand, and here's the thing, this is not an attack on high school teachers. This is not an attack on college professors or the majority of people who hold to evolution are not out there trying to propagate this as an agenda. The majority of people who have evolution is just that's how they ended up, and they're just going about their lives, and it's naturally assumed. Here's the thing I want you to know is we have a presupposition. We all see the world and believe certain things to be true that we can't fundamentally prove, okay? And it is not bad. We all have a presuppositional standpoint. It is not bad to be biased. We are all biased, okay? Biases are your worldview and form how you see the world. Prejudice is wrong to prejudge. But understand that there is not a person who is promoting evolution or a person who's promoting special creation who doesn't have a bias. I am biased towards the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I believe the science supports creation, not evolution. But so nobody is really neutral in this discussion. So starting point, Charles Darwin. We're all familiar with Darwinian evolution, okay? And there were others, Immanuel Kant and Lamarck, who were trying to develop a biological evolutionary model. Well, Darwin did it, right? Origin of the species by way of natural selection. What natural selection is, it's breed the best and forget the rest is the way I've heard it put. Survival of the fittest. You weed out the weaker and the stronger survive, right? So that's the fundamental driving, operating mechanism within Darwinian evolution. Empiricism is what came out of the Enlightenment. Everything has to be empirically tested or does not exist. When I hear debate after debate, discussion after discussion with brilliant scientists, they're like, God doesn't even play a part in this. Well, actually, the starting point does play up in it. Now, there are people in very, very specified disciplines, biochemistry, whatever, who are not focused on that question, and they're just assuming certain things to be true. Behind that is empiricism, your five senses. If you can't sense it, it does not exist. That's the worldview behind what Charles Darwin set up and where we're at today. So a modern person who's promoting this, the mouthpiece for evolution today is Richard Dawkins, a British evolutionary professor who has written a lot of books. His most famous book is The God Delusion. And within that, he's about 80 years old now. Within that book, Richard Dawkins talks about this garden where there's beautiful flowers and all laid out. He says, it has the appearance of design, but it's not designed. He uses this over and over. Stephen Hawking talked about that. There's the appearance of design, but at the end of the day, it's not really designed, okay? So that's, well, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of Ben Stein, but this movie, Expelled, is a really, really, really good movie to watch. And it's from 2008. And Ben Stein basically took on the academic, the entire field of academia, higher education, and said, you guys are blacklisting anyone who holds to intelligent design. Intelligent design emerged in the 90s where they said, and this came from one of the guys who's on your list here, Stephen Meyer. He's wrote Signature in the Cell, and it's a moderately technical book. Stephen Meyer started, along with other people, the intelligent design movement. Well, there were battles in the courts about not allowing this into the public schools, just like the Scopes monkey trial in 1925 that allowed evolution into the schools. You got the reverse now. Okay, so Ben Stein said all these professors are being blacklisted because if they use the ID word, if they use the G word, okay, you're done. Even tenured professors were being fired. So he came out with this movie and he showed what was really going on behind the scenes. It's worth the price of the movie just at the end when Ben Stein interviews Richard Dawkins and says, tell me your position, and Ben Stein kind of picks it apart. Richard Dawkins believes in panspermia. That's where alien life form fertilized the planet, and here we are. That is his worldview. That is what he believes happened. Nothing he can prove or demonstrate. And the craziness, how many of you have ever seen the movie? It's a little obscure movie, Contact, with Jodie Foster, okay? That's the Carl Sagan propaganda piece. I love the movie. I've watched it probably 10 times because scene in there where he goes through a wormhole and there's extra dimensional travel. Well, I think that points ultimately to God, and I think it's an incredible scene. But the entire movie is centered around the SETI project, trying to get extraterrestrial message, an intelligent message from outer space. The prime numbers, oh, we got a message, prime numbers, it means something, extraterrestrial life, alien life form. That's what Richard Dawkins holds to. The irony in all that is that spend all this time tearing down intelligent design with gives you an intelligent message, and the entire project of Richard Dawkins is look for an intelligent message from outer space, right? So what has happened is, I never want to be accountable to God, so I'm going to go ahead and say alien life form, and that it is a possibility, but there's no evidence for it. There's a lot more evidence that God created us. Okay, so Richard Dawkins, and there's the other gentleman who was a big name, he's passed away, was Steve A. Gould. He was an American paleontologist who was very well written, very well respected, and he was the mouthpiece for evolution. Here's the man, if you're interested at all, I love debates. I am not a debater. My personality is far too emotional. If I got into a debate, I would either melt down or get into a fight or something. It would not work for me. I am not a debater. Okay, there are people who are really talented at it, and he's the guy. William Lane Craig, I have two debates listed up there. Willow Creek in 1993, he debated Frank Zindler, and the entire premise of my talk, my 3 points I'm going to give you today, is from William Lane Craig. And he debated Christopher Hitchens, who recently died of cancer, a philosopher and atheist. Just pull up go to YouTube, type in William Lane Craig debate. Debates are tough because debates get you fired up, and then you're like, it's like a tennis match, back and forth. It could be like Super Bowl today. Your team's winning, then they're losing, and it's like, man, you're up and down. Well, that's what debates are. But when you get people who do a really good job and you have a civil conversation, I love to hear both sides because then you can evaluate the information. So he is the guy that you want to go to. Okay, second part of today. We have made science God. And it's a culture war, and it's growing exponentially, okay? So that bumper sticker, if you can read it there, says science is God's way of telling you he doesn't exist. I saw a bumper sticker about a year ago where it said, thank God, and then it scratched out God and said science, medicine, all that. Okay, so what we have done, do you know that knowledge of man has doubled? It doubled in from the early centuries up through the medieval times and the Dark Ages. It doubled every 500 years, every 200 years, every 100 years. Do you know information is doubling every 10 years, every 5 years, every 2 years now? We have so much information. The strides that have been made in medicine in the 100 years, it's incredible. I mean, some of us in this room may be going through medical treatments. I had a craniotomy 7 years ago where they cut my skull open to fix in a hole I had in the roof of my ear canal, exposing the brain and making me susceptible to meningitis. I was blown away. I have my hearing is horrible. Too much classic rock music over the years, and here I am. So I have titanium pieces in my middle ear which snap and connect to the eardrum. And really, really brilliant head and neck surgeon who did this at Northwestern University and shows me this stuff, and it's mind-boggling, the stuff we can do. Science, medicine, the leaps and bounds we have made, but at the end of the day, science as a God will leave you hopeless and in despair. Science, the pursuit of science was started, Francis Bacon, okay, started this in the 1500s, 1600s as a way to explore God's world. And you'll see in your guide, and I'll go to that screen in a minute, how early scientists saw that discipline as a way to explore and understand the world around us that had made. And the whole, the scientific method is observation. You create a hypothesis. You test that hypothesis, like Wilbur and Orville Wright will this plane fly, and you test it over and over, and you refine the process until it works. That's what the scientific method is. Well, Francis Bacon came up with that, and he was doing that so that he could explore the world around him. Understand, and this is a hard screen to read, but it's in your bulletin there. The founders of the scientific discipline in all these fields of science, the majority of them were followers of Christ. They were Christians. Whether it's Johann Kepler or Blaise Pascal or Boyle and on the list goes. Every major area. And who is considered probably to be the greatest scientists of all time is Isaac Newton, maybe Einstein, maybe Hawking, who knows, I'm not debated. But he says, and that quote is in your bulletin here, he said, it is not to be conceived that mere mechanical causes could give birth to so many regular motions. This most beautiful system of sun, planets, comets could only proceed from the dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. So they saw the fact that there was not just apparent design, but there was real divine design in the universe. Okay, so let's get practical here. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, I've been doing religion elective. Principal Muhlendijk's daughter, Kate, is in that class. Shout out to her. And I know that Kate and Ryan Gottschalk are watching online. What I'm going to, these 3 points, cosmological argument, teleological argument, and design in your bulletin. Those kids have learned over the last 8 or 10 weeks, however long it's been. And what I'm going to give you is exactly what their test is on Wednesday to test what they have learned. Okay? It is not hard. It can be intimidating. But I guarantee you these 3 basic premises are very easy to apply. And when you're sharing the gospel, and I got a buddy from softball who said, before the flood, people lived 900 years. Methuselah, 969 years old. How'd that work? So we talked about it, about how old the earth may or may not be, how old people may or may not have lived before the flood, after the flood, the genetic makeup of people and how that's been degraded, and went through it. We had a good discussion. People struggle with these. So understand right out of the gate, the first terms to understand are microevolution and macro. As followers of Christ, and within science, scientifically, macroevolution has not been demonstrated. And here's the crazy part about it. The vast majority of people believe that it is true. You know that it was the theory of evolution. It's still a theory, okay? But it's accepted as fact. Macroevolution is the primordial pond that by random mutations and process became us today, right? Whereas what we observe within nature and what we see within Scripture is microevolution, variation within the species. It's not one species becoming another. A rat does not become an elephant eventually. A canine does not become a feline. These are separate species, separate kinds. So you've got to have that right out of the gate. Okay, first argument, the cosmological argument, the cause and effect argument. Very, very easy to remember the cause and effect argument. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe had a beginning that is now scientifically demonstrated, biblically alliterated. Therefore, the universe was caused, and if the universe was caused, something had to cause it. And that causer was God, okay? Stephen Hawking absolutely said the universe had a beginning. The steady state theory was destroyed by Einstein. For a long time, the steady state theory said the universe is static and it's just there. It's been eternally there. First of all, the universe is not static. It's expanding like a balloon, and they know this. If you took a balloon and put a bunch of dots on it, and you blew it, you see the dots spread apart. That's what's happening with the galaxies. The galaxies are spreading apart. The universe continues to expand today, okay? So, and number two, we have demonstrated, which I'll show you in a moment, that the universe is not eternal. How do you want to remember this? Most of us have seen The Sound of Music. The Julie Andrews principle. Nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could, from one of the songs in The Sound of Music, okay? So what's more reasonable? This is the foundation of the argument, and then I'm going to show you a video. And this is the foundation of the argument. This is the whole question of origins. Where did we come from? Who lit the match that started this universe? How did it come to be? That is the fundamental question, and that is usually ignored by atheists. It is usually ignored by scientists. I'm not worried about that. We can't answer that. Well, you can't answer it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And biblical truth, revelation, God told us. And number two, I will explain to you different things to show you the science supports it. So what's more reasonable? Nothing produced something, or someone produced something. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So this video we're going to show you is Lawrence Krauss, an astrophysicist, cosmologist, really smart guy. who's an atheist, holds to evolution. And his whole premise is that universes literally pop into existence out of nothing. Okay? That's his premise. Very popular book right now within academic circles. And Stephen Colbert had him on his show. Stephen Colbert is a practicing Catholic. And he basically says, tell me about your... And Stephen Colbert picks his argument apart and really shows you the cosmological argument in a funny way. Here you go. It's about 7 minutes long.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest tonight is a cosmologist whose new book is about why there is something instead of nothing. I'm guessing because his publisher gave him a deadline. Please welcome Lawrence Krauss. Let's get the CV out here, because it is not unimpressive.
Thank you.
You are a cosmologist.
That's not a cosmetologist.
Not a cosmetologist. Okay, because I was going to ask you for a mani-pedi. Okay. A theoretical physicist. You're the director of Origins Project at Arizona State University. The new book is called A Universe from Nothing. Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing. A book about the ultimate question. Mm-hmm. Okay, Doctor. Sweep away thousands of years of mystery and awe at creation that let the greatest minds in civilization all over the world to lead to one point: a still divine, loving creator. Destroy it. Why is there something instead of nothing?
It's really easy, because nothing's unstable. In fact, there's no evidence for any deity. Everything we know about the laws of physics, which are remarkable and have changed everything about the way we think about the universe, what nothing is and what something is. This table here is mostly empty space.
This table cost me $500. You tell me I got ripped off? Well, let's go back a second, okay? Nothing is unstable. What do you mean that nothing is unstable? Nothingness is nothingness.
Well, the physics has changed what we mean by nothing. In fact, nothing is space is a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles popping in and out of existence.
Oh, wait, no, that's not nothing. That's something. Why are those virtual particles there?
Because of the laws of quantum mechanics. And tell us that even though you can try and count and see what's in there in empty space, you'll see nothing. But in fact, one of the biggest mysteries, and the reason I wrote the book, one of the greatest discoveries of the last 50 years is that, in fact, empty space weighs something.
Empty space weighs something.
In fact, it's the dominant stuff in the universe. Nothing
so I am never going to lose those last 5 pounds.
Never. In fact, it's first because, in fact, unlike normal stuff, you may have learned in high school that gravity sucks, but in fact, it doesn't. With empty space, it's repulsive. And that empty space is forcing the universe to expand ever faster. Faster.
So the nothingness is forcing us apart.
It's forcing us apart. Well, we're not going to be forced apart, but the galaxies are.
Okay, you say you haven't been rubbing any of that baby shampoo on your head, have you? With the THC in it?
Well,
no?
No
You're
comment.
Clean?
No comment.
You're clean? Leave me a hair sample. We'll check it later. All right. So, okay, you say there are 3 different types of nothing.
That's right.
What are the 3? I didn't know there was such a variety. Yeah, a sampler platter of
I would have thought
nothing.
You'd be an expert on it. But
on
in any
nothingness?
Case, yeah.
Yes.
In any case, there are 3 different kinds of nothing. First, empty space, which I'd say is probably nothing of the Bible, an eternal, dark, empty void.
Do you mean like a true hard vacuum?
Exactly.
That's nothingness you're talking about?
Most people would have thought it would be nothing.
That's what I think nothing is.
And then I
also
tell you that,
Baltimore.
but then if I tell you that kind of nothing acts unstable, you wait long enough, that kind of nothing will always produce particles.
By saying that it will...
If you wait long enough, the laws of quantum mechanics tell us that particles will burp out of empty space and eventually fill up a universe. It's really remarkable.
That, to me, me, that sounds like the empty space may be empty to us, but it is some sort of sheath or membrane between us and some other reality.
No, there's nothing. Well, there's absolutely nothing there until there's something.
What's the second type of nothing?
Okay, well, then if you don't buy that, then I can say, well, you might say, well, that's not nothing because there's space.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out if you apply quantum mechanics to gravity, then in fact, space itself becomes dynamical, and universes, spaces themselves, and time pop into existence where there was none before.
So in
fact,
some theoretical end space, before the moment of creation, there can be no time and no space and no energy.
And no energy. Zero energy.
And then suddenly, from nowhere and from nothing, comes something and somewhere.
And all sorts of stuff. And it sounds like the ultimate free lunch. And
yes,
it is.
It is.
It is. And it really, what's remarkable is it's possible without any supernatural shenanigans. And
but listen, stop with that.
Why?
Why do you have, why is what you're doing, whatever this is? Because obviously, because I am not in the priesthood, I can't understand the scrawls on the blackboards, people down at, where are you?
Well, that's why I wrote the book, so you could.
Where are you? You're Arizona State.
Arizona State.
Okay, you priests of theoretical physics, you can explain to each other what you mean with your language of math, and I have that on faith.
No, in fact, you should be skeptical.
I am.
And in fact, you should, I know. And that's why you should, that's why I try the arguments in the book.
But I will never read it. So why other people should, you should buy it.
Buying it is important.
Buying is good.
Yeah,
okay. But why does what you're saying have to be an attack on my God?
it doesn't have to be an attack.
But that's all you've done. You've attacked my God for the last 6 minutes.
No, you have. All I've said is you don't need him.
That's an attack.
No,
of course we are here to love God,
the universe,
serve God.
as we understand it, we've changed our minds about the universe. We've learned that the universe is more remarkable than anything we ever thought before. And in fact, changing your mind and in fact being wrong is wonderful. You should try it sometime. It's really amazing. It means that the fact that the universe is more remarkable than the fairy tales that were talked about by Bronze Age literate peasants before we knew the Earth orbited the sun.
You're not attacking at all, but go ahead.
No, but I mean,
but Leslie, you say, so you believe there's no God?
I don't even use the word believe. The point is there is
no God.
There's no need for God.
Is there God? Is there God?
There's no evidence for God.
Okay.
There's no evidence for God.
Let me ask something. If there is no God, okay, if there is no thing called God, if he is nothing, can't something come from him? Lawrence Krauss, thank you so much. Lawrence Krauss, the universe.
Okay. So I think the point was made in a very funny way, and that last was, it sums it all up, right? That nothing could come from that God that doesn't exist. Something could come from that nothing, and that's really the whole fundamental issue with what is your starting point. So cosmological argument. Here are your two options. Lawrence Krauss has to deal with either that matter is eternal or something outside of the material universe is eternal. Those are your two options. And here's the problem with what he is assuming to be true, and this is what William Lane Craig makes the point, and Hugh Ross, who's also listed there. It's called the gambler's fallacy. He's assuming an infinite sample size of universes popping in and out of existence, okay, by themselves. Something's coming from nothing over and over throughout eternity. This is eternally happening. And then we just happen to be in the one universe where life is possible. But he's assuming an infinite sample size, which I'll show you in a moment where that fails. But called the gambler's fallacy. Let me give you an example of that. The gambler's fallacy says, if you were playing a game of poker, you put your money in the middle of the table, and Buddy Joe, after all the cards are dealt, royal flush. And the odds of a royal flush are astronomical. And you're like, wow, Joe, he collects all the money from everyone, got a royal flush. What if you put your money in the pot again, deal cards, and Joe gets a second royal? What do you say? Joe, what are you doing over there? You messing with the cards? What's going on? Okay, you put money in the pot, Joe gets a third royal flush in a row. Now, if this is a West, you pull out your 6-shooter and you shoot him, right? Because there's no way that this guy is cheating. Well, you would have to get hundreds of millions, billions, trillions of royal flushes in a row to match the odds of life randomly arising. It's called the gambler's fallacy. Here's the other issue with the material universe. This is the principle. So this is Lawrence's premise. This is the entire theory, and this has been going on for about 50 or 60 years. Universe is expanding to what it is now and collapsing, expanding, collapsing, or popping out of nothing, popping and collapsing, and then popping out of nothing and recollapsing. It's the rubber ball principle, okay? And this is the second law of thermodynamics. This is the bullet to the head of evolution. If you took this rubber ball and bounced it, what's it doing? It's losing energy every bounce. The universe is running out of energy, usable energy. And whether it's the universe in which we live, our solar system, or a galaxy, and our galaxy amongst billions of galaxies, okay, it's running out of usable energy. It's the second law of thermodynamics. This is the bullet to the head of evolution, and I've heard many very smart people try to dance around it, trying to atheist evolution. So we are running, in the greatest example of entropy or running out of usable energy, and things tend from order to disorder, is your children's bedroom or your yard, right? Everything tends from order to disorder. If left to itself, chaos does not produce, chaos tears down. And evolution is supposed to be a chaotic theory that produces us. That's one of the things that ultimately where it fails. Now you'll see those Bible verses up there. I included this on the back of your bulletin. As I told you, I got rid of the Q&A. And there are Bible verses that directly relate to the cosmological argument, teleological argument, and the moral argument, okay? The ones that are critical to cosmological argument is time had a beginning. This is the only holy book, the Bible. There in 2 Timothy and Titus, God talks about time having been created. Every other religion in the world talks about time being created within creation. God created it outside. And the other thing, which is really cool, and I'll read to you this really quick, is I gave you the example of the balloon. You put this on it, you blow it up, and the galaxies are spreading apart. Scripture said this thousands of years ago, long before the birth of Christ. Isaiah said it probably about 700 BC, that God stretches out the heavens like a canopy, like a tent. And he says that he spreads them out like a tent to live in. And that's in Job, that's in Isaiah, multiple places. It is the only book that matches what we're seeing in the universe today. And we just didn't know it thousands of years ago. We haven't done that until the last 100, 150 years. And it's Hubble and all of the ways that we can examine the universe, we see the galaxies are spreading out, just as Scripture said. The only book that matches it. So second law of thermodynamics says we're running out of usable energy. Here's the one before we move on to the teleological argument. Irreducible complexity. Seems intimidating, but it's really easy. A mousetrap is an example of irreducible complexity. You have to have all the parts there for it to function. You take away the base, the trap, or the catch, or the spring, it does not work. So step-by-step evolution does not work. 20% of an eye does not make vision. 30% of an eye does not make 30% vision. It all has to be there, okay? And you will see, and my entire talk this morning is not to go through and look at the abysmal record of the fossil. Okay, the fossil record is horrible. In the last 100 years, archaeology has been a major discipline throughout the world, and there has been almost no transitional fossils from one species to it. Well, there are none. And there have been transitional species that have been questioned, Archaeopteryx and others. The fossil record should have thousands of examples of transitions from one species to another. It doesn't exist because just like the mousetrap, God created things at different times in their order. He created mammals, he created birds, he created us, he created the fish. And when he did that, it appears the Cambrian explosion is an example of that, of all these life forms that suddenly appear in the geologic timetable, okay? So, and here's something I want you to understand. Young Earth, old Earth, I really don't lose sleep over that. I joked with Pastor Tiemann, I'm a young earther on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday, and the weekends, I'm an old earther. This is from it is so very, very, very difficult, and I don't think it should be a church splitting issue, young earth, old earth. The reason why, if you're a young earther, you got about 10,000 years, okay? If you're an old earther, 13.8 billion years, the age of the universe. Those are your two. We only differ on a factor of 5 or 6 places to the decimal. Okay? Age of the earth, age of the universe. That is nothing. Do you know how much time you need for life to randomly arise? 10 to the 100 billion years. Even if the universe is 13.8 billion, don't be intimidated by that. Okay? If you look at the cosmological, teleological, and the moral argument, it has nothing to do with the age of the earth. Ken Ham, a young earther who I've read a lot of and I respect and I like, he debated Bill Nye the Science Guy. He did terribly because he focused on the age of the earth the whole time. The earth may be young, it may be old. I don't lose sleep over it. Don't lose sleep over it either. What I put up on the screen there, for life to arise randomly, 10 to the 40,000th power. Let me give you an example of what 10 to the 17th is. We used this once before during our Bible series. If you covered the entire state of Texas with silver dollars, 2 feet high, the entire state, and you painted one of those silver dollars red, and then you were blindfolded and you walked the entire state of Texas and you grabbed one, your odds of picking the right one would be 10 to the 17th power. What I put up on the screen there is 10 to the 900th power. That's 10 with 900 zeros after it, okay? That, for life to arise randomly, biologists, biochemists have speculated it would be 10 to the 40,000th power. There is not enough time, even if the earth and universe are billions of years old. Teleological argument. We'll land this plane in the next 10 minutes and see if we have any questions. This argument is simply design. Everything around us is designed. From the simplest pen to this microphone to this paper. Do you know how many hours of design went into creating a sheet of paper? So how much intelligence, okay? And the argument goes, if things appear to be designed, there must be a designer. Every song you listen to, every book you read, every painting that exists had intelligence and had artistic creation behind it. A simple watch, if you believe that evolution is true, you'd have to believe that a Boeing 747 could be created by a tornado going through a junkyard. I mean, is that logical? Does that really seem like that could happen? No. And the design argument is a powerful argument to state that that is not the case. I know it's hard to read up there, but I want to give you, you guys you're familiar with the 4 forces of nature. The 4 fundamental forces are the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force. I'm going to give you some examples of the gravitational force, okay? But first, if you look up there, how the universe is fine-tuned. If the universe was expanding 1/1,000,000th slower, 1/1,000,000th slower than it is now, the temperature on this earth, I mean, right now, if it was not expanding as it is, the temperature on the earth would be 10,000 degrees. Not good for life. If Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we'd be bombarded with asteroids and comets. Perfectly placed where it needs to be to absorb the majority of the space junk out there. The Earth wasn't on a 23.5 degree tilt, or the moon wasn't exactly how far it is, we would not be here. Life would not exist. It's like somebody monkeyed with the dials of the universe to create life. Here are the 2 examples for the gravitational force. If you mess with it at all, the universe flies out of existence, the gravitational force. You see an aircraft carrier there. An aircraft carrier weighs about 100,000 tons, fully loaded, 6,000 crew, the food, the planes, ammunition, all of it, right? If you took that 100,000 ton aircraft carrier and you varied its weight by 1 trillionth of the weight of an electron, not an ounce, not a pound, okay, not half an ounce, not a quarter of an ounce, 1 trillionth of the weight of an electron, if you varied the weight, if that were the universe would fly out of existence. That's how precisely fine-tuned the gravitational force is, one of the 4 fundamental forces. The other one, if you took that tape measure and stretched it across this room, 100, 150 feet, and if you marked the spot on there, the gravitational force, and if you moved it just a tiny bit, maybe an inch either way, the universe would fly out of existence. But the tape measure wouldn't just stretch across this room. The tape measure would stretch across the entire known universe, billions of light years across. That tape measure would stretch across. And if you took the gravitational force and moved it 1 inch either way, universe flies out of existence. And all of these finely tuned characteristics speak to a loving creator who made us, okay? Last one here for the teleological argument, design, specified complexity, common sense. If you wrote, I love you to your spouse in the sand and then walked away and somebody came along, you think they would think that that randomly was created by some sticks being pushed back and forth by the waves of the ocean? No, it's an intelligent message. Skywriting, drink Coke, drink Pepsi. They hire to advertise up in the sky, right? Proposals, marry me, have been put up in the sky. It's an intelligent message. It's not a random cloud formation because the wind's coming out from the south that day and it created this Pepsi sign. Or the alphabet cereal. I like this one. I heard this years ago. You're getting ready for school. Mom's left for work already. And the bowl of cereal's knocked over, milk's everywhere in the alphabet cereal. All those little letters spell out, take out the garbage, Mom, I love you. Okay? Did the cat knock the bowl of cereal over and write that message, or did Mom, in her goofy humor, go ahead and spell that out for you, right? What makes more sense? This all comes down to the most reasonable explanation, and God is not talking about us to check our brains at the door. DNA is absolutely, the more they explore it, is pointing to a designer, ultimately to God. And here's the way to understand DNA. It's a 4-chemical language, 4-letter chemical language, letter code, whatever you want to say. English has 26 letters in the alphabet. We arrange those letters to come up with intelligent messages, like It's a Wonderful Life, okay? Well, if you believe in evolution, then this isn't the story of a man who gets disillusioned and gets a second chance at life, right? This book is the ink and paper story. This is all about the ink that's on the paper. It's not about the message that's conveyed. See the difference? Okay? It's like Shakespeare's writings are not the ink and paper stories. Macbeth and all those are communicating a message. That's what DNA is. DNA is communicating messages so your body can function. And the more they learn about it, they see this Bill Gates said DNA is the most complicated code he has ever seen. So much more powerful than any computer. It's basically a computer language. Well, how come your phone, which is so unbelievably powerful, can have all these apps which are by really smart coders and people sit behind keyboards, but then when we come to DNA, we say that was a random accident. It doesn't hold water, okay? Okay, last one, the moral argument. And this, I think, is probably the most powerful and the one people relate to. Okay, you got Bongo there taking his bananas away from his fellow buddies, and they're a little mad about it. They're protesting. Well, animals, they may protest, but that's instinct, different than morality, which we have, right? Here's the moral argument. Moral laws exist. And if moral laws exist, even one, there has to be a moral law giver. Okay? This is what led C.S. Lewis to come to Christ. He was a devout atheist, wrote Chronicles of Narnia, all that stuff, right? And C.S. Lewis said, I was complaining to this deity that was out there that I didn't believe in about evil in the world. What was I doing? How did I know what evil was unless I knew what a standard of good was? I had to, so he put it in this way. He said, how do I know what a crooked line is unless I know what a straight line is? I have a standard to measure it against. And this is the example I use with the kids. In Washington, D.C., in the Department of Weights and Measure, there is a 3-foot yardstick made out of platinum, kept in a vacuum-sealed case. And so it can't expand or contract. And if you go by a yardstick, it's exactly 3 long because it's been measured against that standard. Here's the moral law. You don't know what good is or evil is unless you have something to compare it against. Okay? And so evil in this world, John Muhlendyke talked about it a couple of weeks ago, that actually speaks to the existence of God, because for you to call something evil, there has to be something good. So that was the argument there. And here's just the common sense part of the moral argument, and I end with this. I'll share a quick story. I was driving home from my softball party. I played softball, 6-inch and 12-inch for 30-some years. And about 10 years ago, I was driving home from Lombard. We had our end of the season party. It was about midnight. And I was listening to Christian radio, and an atheist was on complaining about God and theism and Christianity in particular. And I was like, I think I'm going to call into this radio program. So I called in, just kind of give a rebuttal. Next thing I know, the radio was thrilled. He's like, I'm going to patch these two together, and we got a debate. So at midnight, I'm driving home in the middle of a debate with an atheist. There were probably 4 people listening in the entire Chicagoland area. So it wasn't a big deal. But I sure thought I was like the halftime entertainment at the Super Bowl. I was nervous. I'm like, oh, man, what do I say? So I listened to his points. I made my points. We were on the phone for 20 minutes, half an hour. And I finally came down to it at the end of the day and said, what do you do with love? Because love is rendered meaningless if I don't have the free will choice to love someone. So tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Husbands, fathers, dads, everybody, don't miss it, right? I haven't done anything yet, so I'm the first one who needs to hear this message. So tomorrow's Valentine's Day. I walk in and I give Julie a dozen roses to say I love you. Oh, and by the way, Julie, that was just a random chemical process in my brain. I really don't love you. It was not a free will choice. And all these processes going on in my body, I may just as well not like you tomorrow and divorce you because I don't know what these random chemical processes are going to do. Within evolution, macroevolution, it leaves you feeling empty, right? Number one. Number two, there's no way to go ahead and define, describe, explain free will. Free will is lost because everything's a biochemical process. No different than the heart you have going on are these random chemical processes that have you either love someone or kill someone. That's what you end up with. You end up with is moral relativism. There's no way to justify the difference between a Mother Teresa and an Adolf Hitler. It was just choices that they made due to the random chemical process. It wasn't truly wrong. Okay? So love has meaning within God's economy. So this is it. Random chance or created by a loving God with a purpose. The science supports that we are created. The universe was created. The earth was created. You were designed and for a purpose, for a loving purpose. So I am going to wrap it up now. We'll start the praise team in just a moment. But does anybody have any questions before we go on? A boatload at you. Sorry, I was. And if you go back and you want to listen, or you go to that resource list, you can grab any of those materials. This, once again, is a topic that may or may not come up with you with people who you don't have a relationship with. But I guarantee you, if you share the gospel with people you have a relationship with, you will end up into this conversation about creation and evolution, let alone the need to equip our kids. So. If there are any questions, we'll take it. Otherwise, praise team, if you guys want to go ahead and take the stage. Yeah, Dave, you know what? I'm going to give you this mic.
Not a big deal, but I saw an estimate of atoms in the universe of 10 to the 80th power.
Yep.
Where did that come from?
So, yeah, how do you prove that? How do you disprove that?
Who counted them?
Yeah, who counted them? That's exactly the truth. So that's the estimated number. It's 10 to the 79th, actually. That number's wrong, but it's gone back and forth. We can't even comprehend those numbers, okay? And I talk with the kids, and I ask kids, how far is it from here to Chicago? 40 miles, 60 miles, 80 miles. How big is the Earth? How far is it from here to the moon and all that? And then you start getting into the galaxies, and we lose comprehension of those numbers. That number was derived by astrophysicists who are looking at the makeup of the universe. And what was discovered in 1992 was the greatest discovery in astrophysics history. It was called exotic matter or dark matter, 1992. It's called dark energy. It's all these different terms. It's what the universe is made up of that we can't detect in traditional method, and it makes up the majority of the universe, and it's how the universe clumped together and all that. So in the midst of doing that, that's where they speculate on these numbers. But it's such an astronomical number. Let me close with this. 10 to the 50th, anything the odds, I give you the 10 to the 17th power is Texas covered with silver dollars. Anything that has the odds of 10 to the 50th or higher is considered impossible. Life to arise randomly would be 10 to the 40,000th power. I just threw the atoms up there as a number I've heard before. I've no way to demonstrate that or present that for you, right? So, okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, and have a great morning. I will hand it over to Amy.
Let's rise as we sing our closing song. It's called Resurrection Power, and it's really just focusing on just how much power God really has. So let's sing it together. 1, 2, 3, 4.